Whether you're joining us for the first time or you're back for more specialist insights, welcome to Product Marketing Off-Piste. Before we begin, we want to say a thank you to our sponsors and partners for helping us bring this awesome event to life. We're sure you'll enjoy it. And if you're on the lookout for more resources, our Slack community is home to a bunch of contributions from thousands and thousands of fellow product marketers. So if you're not already a member, join the debate. But for now, enjoy the presentation.
In some ways, things are kind of the same.
People are dropping off.
In other ways,
the screen's too slow.
well,
Fluffy, seriously.
We still got a couple things just to polish this up.
the good news is we've learned we can do this.
Any questions?
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, let's run through the sign-up flow. I really like how clean it is. And of that,
Turns out when we're hitting our goals, nobody cares if we're wearing pants. We just need the right tools. So our team stays a team. So no matter what comes next, we know we can work better, do better. This is going to work.
Hi, I'm Meg Glasser, Product Manager of Monetization at Asana, and this is my colleague, Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily Hanna. I'm a product marketer at Asana for monetization and adoption.
And today we're going to walk you through 5 steps to help your product team build for revenue. So the 5 steps are, first, to align on your principles as a company. Second, to integrate with your existing processes. Third, to get involved early in the process. Fourth, know your customer. And fifth, show your work. So we'll walk you through these steps in a little bit more detail. So first, we want to center on what we at Asana call the pyramid of clarity. So as you can see from this image, all of the work that a company does, you'll see at the very bottom of the pyramid here, are grouped into projects. And these projects all support key results or goals that your teams or projects are rolling up into, which roll up into your business units, business objectives, product objectives, internal objectives, which then roll up into company-wide objectives, which are roll up into your strategy. And ultimately, all of this supports your mission. So for any company, it's important to drive this alignment so that you're all pulling in the same direction. And so companies don't always like to talk about revenue. It's one of those things you don't talk about at Thanksgiving along with politics, but it's really important to talk about revenue so that you can make your company successful, because revenue is really the fuel that allows you to continue to drive towards achieving your mission. So here at Asana, we think of customer value as being what fuels our mission. So really, customers get value from the products that we build. Because they get value, they purchase those products and they grow their usage over time. When they purchase, we at Asana get revenue. We use that revenue to drive our hiring and our R&D. That hiring and R&D drives more creation of product value, and customers continue to get value from those new releases that we provide. So the key thing to this cycle is that if you're making good product, people are going to come and buy it. Basically, like the classic adage of if you build it, they will come. If you build good product, people will give you money for it, and you can continue to use that revenue as fuel to achieve a big, audacious mission. If you're not building good product, or if you're not listening to your customers, you won't be able to have this virtuous cycle happening. So revenue isn't the end goal. The end goal really is creating value for your customers, but revenue is one indicator that you're being successful in that strategy or approach. So we mentioned the 5 steps. The first step is really to align on your principles. So here at Asana, we did an exercise where we thought about who are we as a company and what do we want to bring out into the world? And what's the order that we want to focus on those things in? And we came up with this list of 3 things. So this was what was right for us. This may not be right for your company, but I'll walk you through some of our thinking here. So first, because Asana is in an emerging market of work tracking and productivity, it's really important for us to optimize for growth because we want to grow that, basically the size of that pie, grow the work tracking market overall, but also we want to grow our slice in that pie. So it's important for us to maximize adoption and seat growth. So we want to be able to price and package our features and monetize our features in a way that encourages customers to use our product successfully and healthily in a way that's going to make them long-term customers and that's going to scale their use. We also want to make sure that we're capturing as much willingness to pay as we can, because that helps us continue to have that virtuous cycle of revenue driving R&D, driving future improvements to the product. And we also want to be competitive because we're in an emerging market and there's lots of really exciting competitors finding brand new ways to solve this problem. It's really important that we're thoughtful about what other people in our area are doing and that we're responding appropriately to that with the way that we plan to monetize. The next is to be customer-centric. And so at Asana, it's really incredibly important to us that our mission is achieved not just through paying customers, but for even those who don't have the ability to pay. That's something that I think sets Asana apart and makes us a unique company and a unique mission-driven company, is our commitment to try to make some aspect of the power of Asana productivity available to those even with less ability to pay, including nonprofits and schools and other groups like that. And finally, we're primarily currently a self-serve driven business. And so it's really important for us to have a clear offering. People are showing up on our pricing page online, and they don't have someone sitting next to them that can walk them through all of the details and necessarily help them figure out exactly what's right for them. So our offering has to be self-explanatory. They have to be able to opt themselves into the right plan for them. So it's really important when thinking about pricing and packaging that even when we consider 1 and 2 here on this graphic, we also want to consider what does a customer assume is happening here and how can we make that assumption the right assumption for their future success. So as you're considering this for yourself, consider what stage your company is in. Are you optimizing for revenue or market capture? Are you maybe in a more stable and defined industry where you have slightly different goals for pricing and packaging and monetization? What are your de facto principles today? You might be able to look around and see what kinds of decisions are being made and interpret what your principles are that you're actually using as to underlying guide those. And finally, who do you need to bring into your plan? What are their concerns? What are the goals that they have within your company, and how can you address those? Moving on to step 2. The second step is to integrate with existing processes. So here at Asana, we use what we call the double diamond model. There's lots of companies that use this. We are not the only company that designs using the double diamond model. But what we have here is we looked at this double diamond model that product managers and product marketing managers were using to develop their features. And we said, okay, where do these teams need to be thinking about monetization in order for them to be successful at the end of the day? Because it turns out that designing for revenue is really about designing good products. If you know your customer and you've been thinking deeply about their pain, you also have the answers that you need to monetize effectively. So we picked points on this existing process where we could jump in with some monetization type questions to get all of our teams aligned and thinking about these questions early in the process. So as you're thinking about this for your company, think about what your existing processes look like. Maybe you don't have a beautiful chart like this, but you can imagine what your approval steps are, and you can jump in on those same kind of checkpoints. Also, what do your current packaging processes look like? How is this being decided today? Think about what you can codify and make transparent of what's already happening, and then start to make changes on top of that. Now I'm going to hand it over to Emily, who's going to walk us through the next few steps.
All right, thanks, Meg. So now that you have aligned on your principles, you've integrated with existing processes, the next step here is to try to get involved as early as possible in these processes. So we know that PMM is this essential link between product and between business. We bring customer insights and business feedback to product to help craft their roadmap. But then we also work with product to relay product updates, build our product and go-to-market strategy, and share that with business stakeholders. And the key here is to make sure that product and business are aligned throughout this entire process. In order for us to be really successful and to be the true API between product and business, PMMs really need the tools and insights to influence product teams to build with monetization in mind. To do this, PMMs need to go from someone who just runs a launch to who is a stakeholder and one of the many voices from the business to a true partner to the product team. Someone who is involved throughout this entire process and is a consolidator of all the voices from the business side. When you look at your organization today, how are they doing this? Where are their gaps? If there's an established voice of customer process and the product team is getting really, really good insights, look at other areas of opportunity. If you see that the product team is maybe over-indexing on feedback from large enterprise customers, figure out where that gap is and how you might be able to get those insights from maybe self-serve smaller customers that will help craft that product roadmap and make sure that we are having a balanced point of view throughout the entire process. Another thing is that PMMs can really help ensure product and business are in line, but in order to do that, you have to get involved early, but you also have to get involved prior to them even kicking off this product development process. This is where you should be asking key questions like, why are we building this feature at all? Is there a willingness to pay? How urgent is this problem? These key questions will help inform the entire product roadmap and the strategy throughout. Because product marketing is such a cross-functional role, we are usually representing someone who is not in the room. So when we are working with product and chatting with them about the design spec, the entry points, how customers are going to be purchasing this feature, you should be putting on your self-serve hat and thinking through a lot of those questions and pushing product to think about, okay, if someone comes in from this entry point, how are we going to make sure that they have a cohesive journey throughout and we can really hit those conversion metrics that we want to hit. So some questions that will be important to consider at this point is, what does your partnership look like with your product teams today? And how might you get involved earlier? You could have a really good relationship with product, but where are those gaps where you can really find those opportunities for growth and to make sure that we're building with revenue in mind? What are some processes that PMM can really own? So product has their processes, but where within that can you make sure product is going to own this piece of this step? How can PMM partner in revenue driving decisions today? So this will really help ensure that when we are thinking about revenue, when we are thinking about monetization, PMM can be a key stakeholder in those conversations. And another thing that is key here is understanding what motivates both the product org and the business org. Meg alluded to this earlier, that sometimes revenue is a little icky and people are like, I don't know if we want to talk about that. Let's make sure that we get adoption right, or let's make sure this feature is like really great for these customers, which are all really important, but we really need to make sure that input of how are we going to get customers going to get value for this, and how are they going to make sure that they feel like this is a valuable feature that they want to pay for, that journey is important. So figure out what motivates those two teams to really make sure that we're building with monetization in mind. The fourth step here is knowing your customer. So when you're thinking about knowing your customer, having alignment on your packaging value props will create this cohesive journey for customers no matter how and when they purchase your product. But to actually create and validate those value props, you have to understand what your offering means to your customers. This means that we need to get out there, we need to chat with customers and really get a deep understanding of why they purchase one thing versus another. Once you have that data and insight, you can bring those learnings to your product partners and use that to back and craft your messaging. There's a couple of revenue paths. We know that customers don't just buy from like one specific source usually. So now to really influence product teams and build with monetization in mind, you need to understand customers' purchasing journey and the optimal path for adoption and revenue. Not all things are created equal. So in short, how does your company really ring that cash register? For B2B companies, this could be things like demand gen is a big driver, account-based marketing. For digital, it could be things like SEO is your biggest driver, or these landing pages are really, really big drivers of revenue. Once you understand what those levers are, you can drive revenue and figure out what metrics actually move those revenue numbers, and then use that to craft your go-to-market strategy and leverage those surface areas. I can't share exactly internally Asana's big revenue drivers, but let's say, for example, at your company, you know that there are a couple landing pages that really hit those conversion metrics. How can you make sure that those learning from those pages are built into your strategy, into your product strategy, and leverage those surface areas for continued revenue growth? Some things to consider at this point is what internal data could you use to create or validate your pricing and packaging value props? That is like the highest level piece to making sure that this cohesive journey is throughout, and that will help you understand the placement of features in the future. Another piece is, what are those most leveraged surface areas that drive revenue, and how can you use those leveraged surface areas as learnings or to create even more revenue drivers? The next one is, how can you really become a monetization expert? What are some of those things that you need to learn in order to be a key stakeholder in those revenue driving decisions? And that will help you become more of a product partner, but also make sure that we are building with monetization in mind. All right, so the last step is show your work. All right, Meg, take this one.
All right, so one of the most fun things about pricing and packaging, but also potentially one of the most challenging things about pricing and packaging, is that for better or for worse, it's a team sport. Everybody in the company has an opinion on pricing and packaging, and they want to be involved in this conversation, and they all need to be involved in this conversation. So it's really critical to learn how to show your work so that you can work with this large group. What you want to be able to do here is capture the best from all of those various diverse points of view and encourage a cross-functional conversation. So here at Asana, one of the things that we did that Emily and I worked on was that we built this template that encourages a cross-functional conversation among the various key points of view that might inform the way we might price or package a new feature. This templatizing of this process also makes it easy for PMs and their cross-functional partners to do the right thing. As a PM, I can tell you that PMs are busy people. They don't want to have to invent their own process. Make it easy for them, and they will do the thing that you need them to do. And the other benefit of having this show your work piece here is that it also allows these different stakeholders to check your work. Because often, because these stakeholders are coming at this from such different points of view, the product point of view for this may often look very different from the sales point of view or the marketing point of view here. It's important that you have a document in a standard format that allows you to list your assumptions and your thinking, so that as this is being shopped around to all the other folks who need to be involved in this decision, they can look at not just your final recommendation, but how you got there, so that even if they maybe disagree on your final decision at the end of the day, if they agree with the thinking that got you there, they may be more able to get on board with the final decision. Back to you, Emily.
So once you've created that template and that process, it's really important to state your goals from the start and create that feedback loop. If you do this, it makes it much easier for future projects to always think about, okay, what are our goals for this project? What are our goals for this launch? What learnings can we take from previous launches and projects? So a key thing here is to make sure that you institute a consistent process. We all know that whether you slice it this way or dice it this way, you could get a slightly different numbers. So making sure the way that you actually think about revenue and drive that is all consistent throughout the process. It's also really important just to get in the habit of reporting those revenue results. We know things can get, we might not hit it on the first 28 days, or things might look a little bit dicey in the first 7 days, but making sure everyone has a shared understanding of where we are when will be really, really helpful throughout this. Another one is to make sure that you're really aligned on revenue targets early. So sometimes we think about it like a month before launch, and we're like, okay, we're going to try to hit this. But it's really hard to drive that number when you do it kind of towards the tail end of any process. It's much easier if you know exactly who your target is and how you're going to drive that revenue from the beginning, and making sure you have cross-functional alignment from business stakeholders and product stakeholders will set you up for success of hitting those targets and goals. The last one is to really make sure that you create a shared understanding of revenue metrics. This can become a little bit tricky, especially if data and metrics aren't business and product stakeholders' specialty, but making sure that you're not talking across each other will be really helpful when you're setting those targets, because you can have a shared understanding of how those targets and revenue metrics are driven and what those actually mean. So some questions to consider here are, who are your key stakeholders in revenue and monetization today? And how can we make sure that we build that template with those stakeholders' feedback in mind? The next one is that if you don't have a monetization process in place yet, totally fine. But who can you loop in to create that consistent process, right? Monetization is not a one role or one person job. Monetization is a company-wide thing. And so what are the different players you can bring in to create that kind of like monetization team to make sure that it's spread throughout the company? So to kind of wrap this up, there's 5 steps to really help your product team build for revenue. One is that alignment on your principles as a company really early on. The next one is making sure that you integrate with existing processes, get involved early. 4, know your customer. And lastly, show your work. We hope that this helps you all influence your product teams to build with monetization in mind. It's been so nice chatting with you all.
Welcome to Product Marketing Off-Piste. We've yet another exciting presentation coming up, but before we get started, we'd like to take a moment to thank every one of our sponsors and partners, because without them, we wouldn't be able to bring this event to you. Don't forget, each speaker is going to be answering your questions, offering tailored support after their presentation. So stick around, leave your question, and get advice from a true expert in the field, tailored to you. It's that simple. Enjoy the presentation.
Every year, 60% of your team's time goes to doing things that aren't actually work. That's enough time to get from LA to New York. Walking. With Asana, your team gets that time back. Asana makes it easier for teams to get work done, assign tasks, select due dates, and keep everyone on the same page. You can find the latest and greatest attached to each task. Discuss work details right where work happens. With Asana, your team can view any project in the way they find most useful. They can avoid getting overwhelmed by balancing their workload and removing bottlenecks. With Asana, you can see what everyone is doing and automate processes for the type of work you do most often. And it provides built-in feedback and approvals to keep things moving. Asana is built to scale across your entire company so anyone can see where things are at and how it all maps back to the company goals. So get that time back and get the team organized around the work that matters most. Try Asana today.
Hello everyone, a very good morning, good afternoon and good evening. Thank you for taking time to join this session. I hope that it has been a very rewarding 2 days for you so far at the Product Marketing Off-Piste 2020. A big thank you to Product Marketing Alliance, PMA, for organizing this amazing event for all product marketing professionals connecting globally and virtually. My name is Frankie Lee, and I'm a freestyler. Very excited to be sharing the topic on why being a product marketing manager will supercharge the foundation and success of your marketing career. A timely topic at the last day of the Piste, so you can reflect back on your learnings and hopefully be inspired into 2021. So let's start our ski adventure right now. I want to begin with a brief introduction about myself. I've been a B2B tech marketer for over 16 years across varied marketing roles, which includes global, region, country, product and communications roles across the entire marketing spectrum. I'm currently serving as the marketing director for Asia Pacific and the Middle East at GfK Asia, which is a German global market intelligence service provider, responsible for revenue marketing as well as reputation building. And perhaps I could also share some reasons why I'm doing this. Driven by my passion in marketing, I would like to share personal experiences with others so they can benefit professionally and personally as a way of paying it forward. Throughout my career, I had the benefit of learning from great managers and mentors who have shaped my skills and thinking to where I am today. And I hope to be able to do that the same for you. At the same time, as I put together the content for this presentation, it also allowed me to reflect and learn. So here's a quick snapshot of my marketing career journey so far. As you may recall, I shared earlier on about varied marketing roles. Starting with region and country roles, I have been working with tech companies, including Symantec, Red Hat, and Fuji Xerox, with a focus in enterprise software and services. In these roles, I was actively involved in marketing campaigns, branding, field, and channel marketing. And I also spent a considerable number of years at Dell, where I led the team of product marketers responsible for product and outbound marketing for SMBs and enterprise segments for Dell's imaging business, including hardware, software, services, and even an innovative SaaS offering. And finally, in more recent years, I returned back into the field, focused on pipeline and revenue marketing and reputation building with Sophos, a security solutions provider, targeting SMBs and mid-market, and of course, in more recent years, with GfK Asia, focus on the enterprise for market intelligence services. As I reflect back on my career journey, I realized there were many key learnings and skills which I've acquired during my stint as a product marketer that has proven to be very valuable for me throughout these roles. And of course, that's the reason why it's inspired me to come forward and share through this session today with all of you. And the topic that we're going to talk about, I would like to approach it in two parts. The first part, I'd like to share some personal observations on what makes a great product marketer. Thereafter, we'll take a bit of time to examine some foundational skills and knowledge acquired as a product marketer and how they are transferable and valuable to other roles across the marketing continuum. Let me begin with this famous quote from Peter. I'm sure many of you know who Peter Drucker is, and of all his great work and advice, I love this quote most. The aim of marketing is to know and understand customers so well that the product or the service fits him and sells itself. This quote has been around for decades and continues to be very relevant today. Essentially, it is all about product market fit and the role of marketing to gain customer knowledge in order to fuel the innovation of great products that will be commercially successful. So, what makes a great product marketer? In the course of my career, I had the opportunity to work with great teams of product marketers, and here is a selection of some of my most favorite traits that I've observed working with these great teams of product marketers. And you probably noticed in the remaining slides of this presentation, given that I'm a movie buff, you might see some snapshots of some really great movies as well. So the first I'd like to touch on is being a dreamer. And that is perhaps one of the most important traits of a product marketer. Imagining what the future will be like for customers and the ways to solve problems today that may not exist yet. Some of these product marketers that I've worked with have always strived to put customers at the center of whatever they do, not just focusing on the competition. They have an infectious attitude towards customer needs versus their wants. The famous quote from Henry Ford, he mentioned, "If I ask what customers want, they will probably answer horses that can run faster." What that tells us about this is really essentially product marketers believe that customers do not always know what they want. And it's really a tall order and task for them to imagine all those creative ways and solutions to meet their needs and solve their problems. The second trait that I really see as a valuable skill is storytelling. As a product marketer, it is critical to be able to excite, sell, and inspire others within your organization on the next generation of products and services. This is often a difficult task, and the ability to tell stories become imperative for product marketers to articulate clearly reasons why the next innovation will benefit customers and for their organization. The third trait that I've also seen is entrepreneurial. And product marketers clearly have to have a keen sense of business and financial acumen. Almost like an entrepreneur himself or herself, he or she has to know the numbers at the fingertips, whether it's the market size, the growth, or the share and profitability, in order to steer the organization and the business towards that opportunity and to excite them to chase it. And in the course of doing that, another key trait of product marketers is really being a problem solver. And I've seen how many product marketers have been highly successful being focused on the mission, getting the job done, and truly breaking down all the barriers in order to bring their product to the market and be successful. Whether it's about mitigating new product launches, delays due to engineering tests, product complaints, low adoption rates, product marketers need to have the right attitude and grit to see through all these issues and others that may come along the way unexpectedly in order to stay on course, on track to the bigger goal, which is to get quality and winning products timely into the market that customers will love and buy. And finally, this very interesting trait as a navigator is probably something that would help product marketers be able to adapt. And being an astute navigator is really about being internally as well as externally. From an internal perspective, great product marketers are constantly on the lookout on new market developments, competitor movements, as well as new technology innovations. In fact, it's in their blood to learn and be curious about all these so as to better themselves and level up their game. While on the internal perspective, often changes such as new business strategy, leadership changes may accelerate or derail existing product strategies and portfolio planning. This is also where great product marketers really stand out from the pack as they look at updating their narratives for their portfolio and continue to stay relevant and be creative to fit to the new course and the new direction of the company. In summary, there you have it. The 5 traits that I've seen and be able to experience myself of what it takes to be a great product marketer. The good news is you can acquire these skills simply by observing and learning from the best, listening and asking for feedback. Having a good mentor definitely helps to accelerate this learning journey, but at the end of the day, it's still hard work that prevails. Let us now shift a little bit of gears and start to go into the topic about supercharge. But before that, let's first examine the responsibilities of a product marketer. In fact, I came across this great piece of research on product marketing responsibilities conducted by the Product Marketing Alliance in collaboration with Compite. It is interesting to see that product positioning and messaging and managing product launches has grown in emphasis over 2019, while reporting and product roadmap planning has reduced slightly. However, following closely behind positioning and messaging, it is of no surprise for content marketing to register that marginal increase. But there's much more behind the engine when we think about supercharge. And here, I'd like to introduce the pragmatic marketing framework as a point of reference. Developed by the Pragmatic Institute in early 2000, this framework has been widely referenced by many technology companies on marketing. I personally like to use this framework as it is clear and easy to understand on the different key components across the entire continuum, from strategy to execution. Over the years, the topic on where product management fit in this framework has been widely discussed. In fact, if you look towards the left-hand side, that's where the concentration from market to planning very much revolves around portfolio strategy and product management. For that matter, I put an end to web positioning, buyer personas, and user personas, because in my view, further down the road is where the brand reputation building and marketing really takes over. And that's towards the right-hand side of the continuum. Arguably, the consideration of positioning, buyer and user personas are becoming increasingly integral to modern marketing practices as companies chase after and compete against trying to be audience-centric and relevant. We can also look at this entire framework in a slightly more simplistic way, and that is what is known as upstream versus downstream marketing. Nevertheless, it's important to note that every organization is unique. Even if they are selling different similar products in the same industry, consequently, the same applies, and the role of PMM varies across these organizations too. Now, we're not going to be spending too much time to dive through each of these boxes. I do welcome you to do your research on the Pragmatic Institute to learn more about these different components and compare and contrast where your role lies in this continuum itself. But the question is, so if you are a product marketer today, how will your path look like? And for that, I took some research using PayScale as a reference based on the United States information. And I looked up the position of product marketing manager to see what the career progression looks like. As you may appreciate, these are based on data from working professionals registering with a PayScale account. The connecting lines in terms of bonus reflects the position of career advancement and how more or less common these advancements are for product marketers. There's no surprise if you look at this first chart as a straight line. It's probably from a product marketing manager rising to become a senior product marketing manager and then moving more towards in the product marketing leadership role. Similarly, there could be accelerated fast track moving towards product marketing leadership positions that will look something like this as well. But there's also another path in the middle, and that is transitioning from product to the marketing in the downstream, and eventually leading to the highest echelon of the marketing function as a CMO. With this in mind, let's revisit the marketing continuum as I shared earlier on, And here I'd like to dive a little bit more with an example. And we talked about upstream and downstream. And here, starting from the product marketing view, we will use positioning and messaging as an example. Value proposition is probably where it all begins, the crux of everything, and further expanded into what I like to call FFB, functions, features, and benefits. Amongst all this, this is where the claim to fame comes in terms of product claims. Lots of hard work here when you think about how this gets articulated at the portfolio and as well as at the product level. Getting all the quantifiable, measurable proof points to substantiate the product claims. Meanwhile, from a sales and marketing view in the downstream, the positioning and messaging from the product teams will then be translated and transformed into creative concepts around the key messages, stories, and narrators into the market to reach target audiences. Here is probably an ongoing, constant juggling between going to the market as a point product or taking a more solutions-oriented portfolio marketing approach to reach the target segments. In this example, I like to draw upon my experiences at Dell and using the example of the printer that was designed for the small and medium businesses, as well as for the SOHO, small office and home offices. In this value proposition, size and footprint was key for this target segment. An aspiration of being the world's smallest for this product as the competitive and differentiated claim was being planned for. Taking this downstream, the creative execution will be backed up by the main product claim, followed by the expansion of the copy that will describe the rest of the functions, features, and benefits. On this chart, there are really two key takeaways. One, upstream marketing activities have a significant impact into the downstream, and the role of product marketing becomes paramount in providing leadership and clarity so as to ensure the core positioning and messaging is correct in the final creative execution. This is only possible through quality documentation, program management, timely and accurate stakeholder communications. With this skill, knowledge, and experience, product marketers have a high appreciation and can understand the crux and dependencies in having the right and clear product information for sales and marketing execution. In that sense, this also forms a foundational skill for product marketers to supercharge their marketing career. Let's now dive further into the top 5 PMM skills and knowledge that will supercharge your marketing career. These are based on my personal observations and learnings and experiences that I've seen from many of my colleagues in the product marketing teams, and I like to share them with you and to explain a little bit more how they can supercharge your career. Let's start with the first trait, which is the addressable market. And here, understanding what is the addressable market is such an important skill and knowledge, and can be transferable for product marketers that goes beyond marketing, whether it's in strategy, planning, or even in sales management. In fact, some of the supercharged elements here include knowledge of what is a market definition, the categories and the size, and along the way, gaining financial acumen on market potential, share, and growth. All this then becomes really invaluable when it comes to segmentation and targeting for sales and marketing activation. The next trait that I've seen is market research. And here, market research is really about a skill, a foundational skill in formulating hypotheses and concepts to be validated. This may be a new feature, a new function that, or for that matter, a brand new, totally new offering that your company is planning to serve the market. And in the area of target personas, buyers and users, market research helps to increase our understanding on the pain points and solutions available today for our customers, including their purchase decisions. Of course, with modern web, internet, and mobile technologies, market research has also evolved beyond simple surveys, but also through social listening channels. But as a foundational skill in understanding how market research works, would help product marketers connect the dots and be able to test some of the concepts and the thinking. And this is particularly useful downstream as well. When you think about formulating the next big marketing program or the campaign to target your different market segments and understanding those relevant needs and pain points of the buyers and the audience itself. The third trait that I've seen is surrounding messaging. And we've covered a little bit of this in the earlier example. And here I want to emphasize on the relevance of messaging to audience and how it relates to the content strategy. Today, companies are increasingly competing for the attention of audiences, and we have to cut through the noise with our unique point of view and why it matters to them. Do not be mistaken. Messaging is not about being able to write and produce the best copy. In the product marketing world, it's simply about being able to describe clearly in simple English what the product stands for. And having that appreciation and understanding of messaging is indeed a foundational skill that will benefit downstream creative concept, themes, storytelling, and a broader communication strategy in terms of what to include, what to focus on, and what to amplify. The fourth trait that I've seen from product marketers is use cases. And some of the best product marketers that I've worked with have the ability and the talent to describe and document the varied use cases of their product and service for the target users. Here, the focus is on the user, extending beyond their persona and profile, but diving into the nuts and bolts on the what and how to use and the benefits associated with the products and the services. Arguably, product marketers are evangelists themselves and should be the natural salesmen. Having the knowledge and the skill of understanding use cases becomes imperative, especially for sales enablement. Whether is it unique selling points or designing demand generation campaigns and programs to bring out the essence and compelling reasons why customers should buy your products and services. This can serve very well also in the form of product demos and videos. And finally, a much valued skill which I've personally benefited as well is road mapping. aka the future. More often associated with strategic marketing planning, the ability to articulate current versus future state can be applied in most, if not all, business situations and scenarios beyond marketing. In fact, road mapping skills within marketing can be applied to marketing transformation from strategy to execution, including program and campaign phases to support customer lifecycle and buyer journeys objectives. It's about having the ability to think ahead and to be able to describe what that future state will look like, and in a very progressive, incremental, improving kind of direction. And so there you have it, the 5 PMM skills and knowledge to supercharge your marketing career. And the question is, are these familiar to you? And if so, how are you mastering these skills and knowledge today in your daily grind as a product marketer? Here, I like to borrow a quote from Forrest Gump, which is, life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And it doesn't stop here. I like to also leave everyone with a reference framework, which has also gained popularity in more recent years, and that is becoming a T-shaped marketer. Essentially, think about this framework in terms of breadth and depth. As your marketing career evolves, take time to reflect on your skills and knowledge. Having the foundational skills acquired as a product marketer marks the beginning of an exciting and rewarding career in marketing. And we're all living in an ever-changing world and markets. The only constant is change, and continuing to upgrade and learn and keep up with new developments in marketing is so important. Whether you started off as a product marketer or subsequently or right now transition into being one, it will be a continuous learning journey. And all these are transferable. Some of those that I've described to you may not be described in the same terminology, but essentially the idea of those foundational skills and how you can expand into the depth of it will really ensure that you build a very wholesome set of skills that will be transferable and continue to be relevant even with changes in the market. I mentioned I was a movie buff, and yes, by the way, here are some of my favorite movies featured in the presentation if you have not guessed them correctly. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope that you found this session rewarding, just as it has been for me reflecting and preparing this for you. I welcome any questions that you may have and look forward to discussing more on this topic. And please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn shown here. Thank you very much, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Whether you're joining us for the first time or you're back for more specialist insights, welcome to Product Marketing Off-Piste. Before we begin, we want to say a thank you to our sponsors and partners for helping us bring this awesome event to life. We're sure you'll enjoy it. And if you're on the lookout for more resources, our Slack community is home to a bunch of contributions from thousands and thousands of fellow product marketers. So if you're not already a member, join the debate, but for now, enjoy the presentation.
60% of your team's time goes to doing things that aren't actually work. Asana gives you that time back. Assign tasks, select due dates, and keep everyone on the same page. You can find the latest and greatest attached to each task. Discuss work details right where work happens. With Asana, your team can view any project in the way they find most useful. They can avoid getting overwhelmed by balancing their workload and removing bottlenecks. With Asana, you can see what everyone is doing and automate processes for the type of work you do most often. And it provides built-in feedback and approvals to keep things moving. Asana is built to scale across your entire company, so anyone can see where things are at and how it all maps back to the company goals. So get that time back and get the team organized around the work that matters most. Try Asana today.
Welcome everybody, I'm Colette Johnson and today I'm going to be talking to you about innovating the persona. It's something that I'm very passionate about and it's very close to my heart in the work that I do in product marketing. And I wanted to share with you some of the tools and insights that I've learned since joining Redgate and some of the things that we implement for our future success. Just to give you a brief introduction of who I am, I'm a product marketing strategist at Redgate. I've worked in the technology industry for just over 14 years now and have mostly worked in B2B customers. If you want to reach out to me after this talk, I know this is an online session, you can drop me an email, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Please feel free to reach out with me. I'm more than happy to talk to you about the work I've done on personas and on a wider reaching area, but happy to share any insights and help you along the way. I want to talk to you about the outcomes of the work I've been doing and what we're going to address during this talk. So the work I've been doing with personas over the last 9 months has helped in a number of areas that I work on. It's led to us pivoting the product roadmap. It's led to an integration to occur between 2 products in our portfolio that wouldn't have happened had we not been doing this continual persona work. It's also enabled me to create time-critical content. I work in the security and data protection offering within our organisation, and therefore things are happening all the time in the news. Some of the things you will have heard about within GDPR, for instance, is some of the fines that have been reached out since the end of the critical lockdown. It means we've been able to produce content and really help clients get on board and look at how they can protect themselves for the future. This has been a fantastic thing for me. The other thing that I've built upon is bespoke sales follow-ups. So when I've been getting insights from the customers and clients that I work with, it's enabled me to work with the sales team to ensure that we're getting bespoke follow-ups and we really are in tune with our customers. And this has led to a shortened sales cycle and really accelerated our sales growth in my area. The other one that's been really important to this year with the changing environment is the customer retention. So looking at how we retain customers, how we add value to them in their businesses, and how we adjust ourselves long-term with this changing working environment. And again, that's something that's been really keen with our personas to really understand our customers. During the talk, I'll talk to you about the tools and how we got to these outcomes, but hopefully I can take you on a journey and share some of our insights so you can get these outcomes too in your organisation. Who is Redgate? So for some of you who won't have heard of us, we're a global company. We operate in America, in the APAC region, and in Europe, and have got 4 global offices. We work in the area of database DevOps, and we're working mostly with a user group called the Database Administrators. They're a fantastic user group. One of the things that we're starting to see with our user group is the influx of senior decision makers coming in there. So we are looking at both the bottom end user from the database administrator all the way up to the senior decision makers of the C-suites and board level decisions. We've got over 200,000 customers worldwide, which is great. Of those, we've got 77 user groups that we sponsor to help give us insight into our products, into our customers, into our buyers and the decisions that they're making. And additional to those user groups, which is a fantastic resource for us, we have 750,000 users in our online community. We have dedicated community spaces, dedicated forums where we can reach out to our customers constantly. And this is a very active user group. I'm engaging with these users every day. They want to reach out with us. They want to share their insights. And again, this is a fantastic resource when you look at personas of these people you can reach out to and start getting anecdotal evidence to look at areas you should be exploring further. Why now? Really important few things that are considering why we're looking at the importance of this continual process within the persona. Well, at the beginning of the pandemic, remote working was something we needed to adjust to because it was essential to us continue our working lives. One of the things that's happened since this time is that people are now, and organisations are starting remote first working. And that's really changed the way that we work. Within our organisation, working with a lot of IT groups, so the way that they're working now is at home, that remote working has started to change some of their processes, change the way they do things, change their decision making. And for me, this has been really important when we look at the persona, because it means that I have to adjust that persona, those pain points, the issues that we see now to that remote first model, where that's essential. The other thing we want to do is the buyer groups are changing. So the other thing that I've started to recognise within our buyer group is that senior decision makers are starting to come into play. They're starting to make a bigger impact on our buyers. So what I need to make sure is that I'm making sure that my customers have the best experience possible by understanding those personas, particularly the user persona buyers who are going to be using our technology, and making sure I can help them negotiate their buyer groups and understand what that buyer group needs to make a decision to buy our technology. And that's a really important thing. Additional to that, one of the other things that we're seeing is role changes within organisations. So we're seeing people taking on additional responsibilities. They may be taking on additional roles within their organisation. And for some people with this remote first working, their role may have considerably changed. And we need to make sure that's reflected in the persona. And that also leads us on to some changed buying behaviours. These behaviours can change. It can be that prioritisation in the organisation has changed. The organisation's strategies have changed. They may be taking a more tactical play point. It may be that actually now that they're remote and the way they're implementing their technology means that other people need to get involved in these buying decisions. And understanding all of these is really, really important for us. And this is something now that we see as quite important moving forward, and things that we see staying long term. And we need to make sure that we understand these to make sure our personas are as successful as possible. I want to talk to you about our approach that we've been using and how this has worked over the past 6 to 9 months for us. But what I would want to say in this is I believe that personas are constantly iterative. It's not a job that's just done and updated every 6-9 months. For me and for the team at Redgate, we are continually looking at those personas. That work never stops for us. We are iterating, we are adding insights, and we're making sure we're as up to date as possible. And that's very telling in the approach that we've got, but to me is very important for successful long-term personas. And I just wanted to really give you that contextual understanding of how we work when I talk about the approaches that we take. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is our customer research and insights library. I actually feel extremely lucky at Redgate. I've never had anything like this ever where I've worked. We have an in-house resource, and basically this has got every customer interview, any insight from the sales team, anything that anybody thinks is important from a conversation they've had with the customer. These are recorded in Word documents. These are then saved into this insights library. They're dated. We know the organisation, we know the person's role, and these are very, very, very good transcripted notes. What's great about these is they're fully searchable. So if I wanted to look at any interview that mentions GDPR, I could search GDPR. Every interview that has that word in will come up for me. And then I can start going through those. I think there's 2 elements where that's really important. One, it helps me get background on the work that we've already done to make sure that I'm not going back to people and revisiting something they've had a conversation about recently. The second thing where I think that's really interesting and where I talk about this iteration within the persona is that I can go and look at the historical conversations that have happened within that customer that I'm going to talk to. So how has that change happened? Is that change something that we see going forward strategically? What has that change occurred for? Did we see that coming? Did we speak to that customer a year ago and they said that they thought that their role was going to change, for instance, from a DBA to an SRE? Did they feel that remote working was something already for them as an organisation? I can understand that and put it into context. So when I go into the call with that customer, I know what's going on. Also, as I'm getting feedback from customers, I can go and loop back and make sure that the narrative I've got flows into that. And if there is a significant change, it helps me really fully understand that. And it's a fantastic resource. And the other thing that it has is it alerts me every time a new call is added. So every time somebody puts a new bit of research into there and it's tagged, you can sign up to the different tags, know when something's coming up for you, and I can see everything that's on there. This is particularly important with a global organisation because it means that I'm not always awake when APAC are. And so when our APAC team are active, I can see what insights are coming in from them. I know what's happening with our US team. And it means that I have that globalisation, which is absolutely key, particularly when you're driving persona work. The next thing I want to talk to you about is something that we introduced in April in our team. This is a fantastic resource that I've been working on, and particularly when you're remote working, is a mural. So we've been using Mural for cross-organisational insights, and this has been a really fantastic resource. This is open to my developer team, our designers, our sales team. Anybody who works within my part of the portfolio can input a small post-it note into this, sharing an insight. What we then do, we let people just fill these insights, and these boards are open to anybody. They can put any insight in there. And then once a week, what I do is work with the other team members. So we're working together, making these decisions with the designers, with the developers. We go through all of these, and then we try and contextualize them and say, every week we do a board like we do over here. And what we do with these boards is we then say, is this a user piece of insight? Is this buyer insight? Does this need further research? Does this need holding for now? Or do we need to drop this out? What this has led for me is two things. A, I can have a fantastic conversation looking at the flow of that customer journey. Does this sit with them as the buyer? Is this something that comes in for the user? Is this a decision that now needs to go to the development team in terms of the roadmap? Is this something that needs to come back to me and be validated with the commercial team to understand the context of what's occurring? It also means we're getting live insights constantly, so we know what's happening with our customers on the ground. We know what's happening to them as an organisation, and we know if we need to react. It also means that when I'm going to do research, if there's an area that we think needs further follow-up, I've got that fresh information and I've got that contextual understanding. This is a great resource. If you aren't using it, I would highly recommend it. It's absolutely fantastic when you're remote working, and particularly when you're working globally, you can get those insights in there all of the time. The final thing that we do is we have sales retrospectives. These are fantastic for us. There's a number of formats that we're using at the moment. We do drop-ins with the sales team every month. They can bring insights to us, bring questions to us. They're a great resource because it makes me understand what's going on in those calls that I'm not part of, what's happening, what issues are coming up. There's a really good example. Somebody came up with an issue with me the other week with one of our buyers. I thought it was very interesting. It was a very change of tact that was going on with some of our audit customers. I then looked into this, and within a week we had a cheat sheet for the sales team to go out and help them with these issues with a user buyer group. And that's actually started to pivot and make some real impact on the ground. So those things really, really work because you're getting this really good feedback in an informal setting. I also have a commercial stakeholder group. I meet with that group every week. They give me feedback of what's happening on the ground, what issues they're coming to. Are there any blocks in the pipeline? Is there anything going on with buyers? Are we noticing new types of people coming into sales meetings that we haven't seen before? Can we investigate those people? And then we just have a casual feedback system. We use Slack channels where people can feedback insights to us as well. Those retrospectives are really fantastic for me because it helps me see when I'm not in sales meetings and I'm not supporting those, what insights are going on? Are there things that are changing? Do we need to pivot? Do we need to get insight? It really helps us validate that persona. Well, I've taught you about the tools that I'm using, and one of the final things I want to talk to you about is the framework. At Redgate, we use Serious Decisions. It's a fantastic framework. I think it's a really practical approach to persona development. It's a fantastic resource. It splits things up into great areas. So if I've got an update and that update is on decision makers, I can just update that area. I can then share that with our sales and commercial team and the wider team that need to understand that. Let them know how to message that, what impact that has on them. It means that I'm not reissuing new personas all of the time. I think that would tire very quickly, particularly with the commercial team that we've got. It's a global team. They've got a phenomenal amount of products that they work with. So for me, it's been a fantastic resource to say, okay, there's something going on with the buying decisions here. Just updated this view, give you a small briefing, and then they're out there and they're making those changes live. And I think that's great. It allows really easy communication. And it also drives a continual process. It allows me to make those small changes that allow me to just keep that persona work moving. It's not a substantial piece of work, and it's not a reissue of a very big persona. So I wanted just to talk to you about the results. Obviously, we mentioned those at the beginning, but I wanted to talk to you about what takeaways we took from these. So one of the things I want you to think about is business is changing. That's really important, but so are the buyers as well. I think it's one of the things that we can sometimes forget is as their organizations are changing, buyer behaviors are changing, the personas are changing, that impact is happening at that level. So as you're making changes to your strategy, that maybe your B2B strategy with marketing, you need to be thinking of the impact of that on the persona. Small changes can have a big impact on buyer persona. And I think this is something I really want to stress to you. A lot of people that I talk to don't do their buyer persona very often. Some other organisations are like ourselves and they do these quite frequently, but there might be a small change. There might be a change in the way that a buying decision is made, but that might be a big impact on your persona. It might mean that you need different collateral. It might mean that we need to take them through the sales funnel differently. It might mean that we have to position ourselves to those buyers differently. So those things are really important. There is no such thing as a small change on a persona. Every change is significant to the outcome. I would say don't be a change with the persona as well. You know, in my younger days, I would definitely have been the person who'd be like, oh, I don't want to change this. I briefed the sales team 6 weeks ago on this persona and now this has happened. That change is really important. You are arming your sales team and commercial team with the recipe for success. You are also arming your marketing team. If you've got DGM teams, if you've got field marketing teams, all of those people, those small changes are key to them. So don't fear it. If you know there's a change and you feel it's important to what you're doing, get that change out there. The impact will be massive and the feedback you'll get from your wider team will be so significantly important and it will make a massive difference. Explore tools and frameworks. So I've given you an example today of the tools and frameworks that we use and what have worked successfully for us. But what I would say to you is implement those that support you, support what you need for success and support your organization. We all have different things that are important to us with our clients, with our customers, with the people we are dealing with at the end and with them. So when you are looking at these tools and frameworks, make sure it works for you and your organization. Understand what works for you, understand the communication channels that work for you. And I would say more than anything else, remember that communicating change is key to long-term success. And you will get into a wheel where people are wanting change, they want to understand that change. So definitely put it out there, definitely get in on this, really understand your buyers at the moment. There's a lot of change going on in businesses and that means that the change is going on to your buyers. If there's any questions at all, drop me a line, do reach out. I will thoroughly enjoy a conversation about personas and implementing this and working with this. It's been fantastic to talk to you. I wish you all a great rest of your day and thank you very much indeed.
Welcome back to Product Marketing Off-Piste. We're sure you're enjoying the presentations from our guest speakers so far. We're enjoying playing host, and the good news is we've even more talks coming up. But before we throw even more grade A content your way, we want to take a moment to thank every person who's contributed to making Off-Piste a worthy addition to the product marketing calendar. Sponsors, partners, speakers, and of course every product marketer who is registered and tuned in. Enjoy the talk.
Every year, 60% of your team's time goes to doing things that aren't actually work. That's enough time to get from LA to New York. Walking. With Asana, your team gets that time back. Asana makes it easier for teams to get work done, assign tasks, select due dates, and keep everyone on the same page. You can find the latest and greatest attached to each task. Discuss work details right where work happens. With Asana, your team can view any project in the way they find most useful. They can avoid getting overwhelmed by balancing their workload and removing bottlenecks. With Asana, you can see what everyone is doing and automate processes for the type of work you do most often. And it provides built-in feedback and approvals to keep things moving. Asana is built to scale across your entire company so anyone can see where things are at and how it all maps back to the company goals. So get that time back and get the team organized around the work that matters most. Try Asana today.
Hi, everyone. First, I just want to say thank you for joining this session today on building an effective sales enablement program from a blank slide. I'm very happy to be here. I'm happy to share my experiences with you. And then here at Tacton, when I started 2 years ago, I actually, with my team, had to build a sales enablement program from scratch. So that's where I got the idea that I could share some of my experiences, some best practices with you, and then a simple framework that can help you get started and off the ground relatively quickly. So I'll start off with a little bit of intro. Thanks for joining today. My name is Nick, the VP of Product Marketing at Tacton. We are a leading global software company that provides CPQ or configure price quote solutions. And for most of my career, I've been in emerging digital space, starting in the cellular industry at Motorola at the onset of the smartphone, all the way to my time at CDW as data centers were evolving from on-prem to the cloud, and now with digital transformation for manufacturers here at Tacton. And I've learned that I love technology. I love product and solution marketing. And in my 2 years at Tacton, I have learned so much more about sales enablement because my team and I had to build this program from scratch, or as I say, from a blank slide. And so I quickly want to start off with who is Tacton? Well, let me give you a little background. We are a leading CPQ vendor, as I said earlier. We build software globally for the biggest manufacturers in the world. Our solutions incorporate CPQ with real-time 3D visualization that allow just about anyone to configure buildable, customized products by interacting with them virtually online or side by side with a sales rep, back when that was a little more easy to accommodate. But if you think of visiting a car website where you can customize your own car from the seat materials to the functions and the features, or if you're buying a customized pair of shoes where you can choose everything from the colors, style, laces, logo color, and so on, or anytime you customize any product online, there is a CPQ somewhere in that tech stack powering that experience for you. Sometimes they're homegrown, other times it's a software, other times it's a customized solution, but that experience is being powered by some sort of configure price quote tool. At Tacton, though, we don't focus on that B2C space. We focus on the industrial manufacturing space because there's such a level of complexity in their customized product offerings that our solution is built specifically to solve. So we have some of the largest manufacturers in the world, as you can see here, customers like Siemens, Caterpillar, ABB, Husky, and that's just a few of them. You can see the rest for yourself. And for manufacturers that are selling highly customized product, you think like elevators or medical equipment, robots, construction tractors, semi-trucks, escalators. all of those things are able to be sold because they've implemented a smart CPQ with can be the most vital piece of a digital transformation for manufacturers in our space. And we're best suited for that because when implemented, it allows anyone from us here in this call to sales and partners to buy highly customized products. And when I joined Tecton in 2008, we were in the early stages of converting from a custom solution consulting type company to a software product company. In fact, my predecessor in the product marketing leadership role came from product management after identifying that there was a need for product marketing as we made this transition. And there was a mighty team of two when I joined that were building content, sales decks, product sheets, ebooks, white papers, and so on. But I came to the realization real quick that it didn't matter how much great content we had, how many training webinars we conducted, or how many updates on features or product launches. There was no buy-in and accountability from the organization as a whole. So it became more and more difficult for us to enable the sales team to effectively go to market. And so it wasn't too long after I started that it was pretty evident we needed to reimagine our sales enablement program, and it needed to start from scratch, or this here. And where do you start when you have just a blank slide? For anyone that's creative, likely a lot of people on this call, the hardest part is getting started, right? And I have plenty of enablement experience in my career. And to be completely honest, I had only worked at organizations that already had a program up and running. So more or less, I needed to ensure that we had the content and training in place, that we had our product launch calendar prepared. And I didn't really know what went into or what the steps should be. However, the good news is I knew how it should look and how it needed to look. And so I had to figure out what are the steps to get there with my team. We needed the basic things that sales enablement provides. It's essential. We know this. It's consistent messaging, a faster sales cycle, increasing in deal sizes, and then stronger onboarding. And that's just a few of them. But these are really important things for sales enablement, because if you don't have a good sales enablement program, you're never going to achieve these or any other goals that you have. But we all know that there's a huge elephant in the room. I experienced it. I'm sure all of us on this call in one way or another have experienced it, and that's adoption. And if you don't have adoption of your program, then you ain't got nothing, to be frank. And so the most important thing that you can do as you launch any sales enablement program is to get stakeholder alignment. It's mandatory, and it is by far the most important step that you're going to have. If you do not have the proper stakeholders aligned, you will end up where I was when I started at Tecton. You'll be producing great content, conducting great trainings, having product launches, and none of it really matters, because it doesn't matter how great that content is or those sales tools are or how beautiful your pitch deck is if there's no structure in place to train sales reps how to deliver it. So I recommend you start by asking yourself 3 simple questions. Who are the stakeholders that need to be involved from leadership? Who is my customer? And then what are the expectations of that customer? So while answering these questions, it is going to vary from company to company. I think you'll still be able to see what I am aiming for here as a message by understanding this here. So you have a product team in your organization. You have a marketing team that you're a part of, most likely in your organization, and then you have a sales team. Now, everyone knows that everybody is always off doing their own thing. Product has their initiatives and agenda. Sales has their quotas that they want to hit. You have your KPIs in marketing that you're trying to hit. And the stakeholders were pretty obvious for me, and they're probably pretty obvious for you. But what you need to do is you need to get marketing leadership, product leadership, and sales leadership all aligned and all bought in to your program. And the fact that you even need a program, because product, while they're developing products, it's really important for them to understand what's going on in the market, but also they are wanting their developments to be sold. So we have to work as that liaison between product and sales to make sure that we have a good message for sales to take to the market. Now, marketing's developing that messaging, understanding the market from customers, understanding the market from analysts, understanding the market from different areas. And they need to also be that liaison to the product team and to the sales team. So it's really important to have all leadership from these key functions and any others you might have in your organization to get their alignment on what is needed for a sales enablement program to be effective. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but I can tell you every one of these groups is doing their own thing. Products doing their own thing, sales is doing their own thing. I guarantee you, you would have a heart attack if you saw some of the slides that they're likely putting in front of customers. So it's really important that you understand getting the leadership is aligned. However, stakeholders aren't necessarily your customers. Your customers are always going to be the sales team. That means that you need to build a program that empowers them to sell faster, more efficiently, and is very easy to use. Getting alignment from the top leadership of the company will determine the success of your program. But you have to understand your customers, which is sales, and what their needs are. I went ahead, and I'll make this recommendation to you, to conduct individual interviews with your leader of the product team, marketing team, and sales team. Get their buy-in, VPs, SVPs, whomever it is, get their buy-in that you need this program. And then once you have that top leadership, go conduct individual interviews with sales reps, some of the best sales reps that you have, with your leaders on the sales team. Talk to your top performing reps, find out what they're doing. They know what works. They also can speak on your behalf to the team and become a champion for you as you roll out and execute this program. They're in the trenches. Other sales reps will look up to your best reps, and they can really be down there supporting your initiatives on the day-to-day. If you get them aligned, you get interviewed, you find out what it is that would make them more successful. And I believe from my experience, all of the interviews you have will essentially tell you the same thing. I think that you may feel redundant after one or two of them. Keep having them because you already know yourself. It's very, very relevant to making your sales team feel involved as part of this process because they're your customer and their problems are what you need to provide solutions for. So to sum it up, it's absolutely vital to do this. And while it may seem like a mission impossible situation to get leadership aligned, conduct all these interviews, it's going to all lead to the same type of thing. But when you get all of these people on board and you get them aligned, it can turn from mission impossible to mission possible. Because when you get that alignment and you get that buy-in, people are more receptive. So building an effective, simple framework is key to making this scalable. It's key to having a system that works and a system that's easy to operate and understand. And then every time you have something new to launch, you just run it through this framework and you already have a simplified version on how to empower your sales team. So once you have your stakeholders aligned, steering committee established with those top stakeholders, you have to put the framework that all sales enablement will essentially run through right here, and you will be able to push this through your organization if you get leadership to buy in, as we just talked about, and then you can empower your sales team to go out and sell your products. So I think I said it earlier, this framework is going to work for the majority of us listening here. And I think that it doesn't really matter your product. If you align with a software space at all, I believe that this framework is going to work. And additionally, I believe that all of your interviews will lead to this framework being a good way to solve the problem. So step one is you create. So you create content, messaging, or a tool that your sales team has asked for, or a slide that your sales team has asked for. You're launching new pricing and packaging. Whatever it is, you create the content, you create the training, and you ensure that this is all going to be trained upon. This can be a pitch deck, persona research, vertical training, a messaging update, a product launch, anything you need to get through the market, you create in this process. And this needs to be owned by product marketing. In most instances, there will need to be input from product managers when it's a new feature or a new launch, and you'll need to collaborate with content marketers in some organization, but ultimately you need to be the driver of creating the sales tools and enablement that will help your seller sell. Step two is to empower the sales organization. And again, this will vary depending on the content, but this is where you train on the content, you train on the messaging, you train on the new pitch deck, all this content you've generated. And at Tacton, we do this in a combination with e-learnings and webinars. What I found works best for us is when you're launching a new piece of enablement, an e-learning followed by a Q&A is a really good way to go, because then you can actually have a report to see who's gone through the training. You can also have an opportunity to push people a little bit farther and remind them. And then you have a Q&A if people come up with questions afterwards, after everybody's taken the training. The real key here is accountability and adoption. And if you shift to an e-learning model, which is especially easy now, you can follow up and make sure not only that the training is complete, but you can roll things out a lot faster and more efficiently. Just make sure you put timelines on it, because you don't want to develop a training in some sort of e-learning and then send it out and 6 weeks goes by and nobody's taken this e-learning. So when you're in that steering committee, establish timelines that work for everyone. Be simple about it too. Don't schedule big trainings for the end of quarters as sales is trying to get their deals closed. Make sure that you're thoughtful about other things going on in their accounts as well, but establish those timelines and then make sure that you train on all of the content that you create. This, again, needs to be owned by product marketing. You may have other key contributors, but it has to be owned by you, and you have to drive it throughout your organization. And once you've empowered the team by training them, the third important step is to validate, because again, this comes down to the core message that you can create the best messaging content in the world, but if people don't retain it, then it doesn't matter. And everybody knows, and that's for us here in this session as well, that you hear something once, it's usually in one ear and out the other. So you have to validate. Consistency is key. The best practice that I find here is depending on the training, you could do a quiz, a role play, or whatever is best. Sometimes it's a combination of the two. But this is where you determine if your messaging is able to be articulated back, and it builds comfort with the sales reps as they go to market and are able to refine how they personalize that pitch to make it their own. And I think a best practice here also is to reward achievements and build in incentives. Give a certificate of achievement once a training is complete. Hold a graduation for new hires after they complete their onboarding. Build in incentives to encourage people to finish first or quick or do the trainings a little bit faster. We have a Tacton Sales University at Tacton, and we reward our account executives with a certificate whenever they complete a larger training or complete a pitch on a new product or feature. And we also hold a graduation and do the same thing for the news hires. I cannot stress enough, this is important, especially the testing and the role playing, because this is how you learn if your message is sticking. And I personally take a hands-on approach with the role playing, especially in onboarding or new messaging launch, because A, it ensures it gets done, and then B, I get to learn a little bit from sales. I get to help guide the way that they speak about certain things. And then I also get that ever valuable feedback when they can say, this isn't going to work in the marketplace and here's why. And then you keep that constant loop going where you have open communication and you're building trust within that organization, which is also very important. And then the final piece here, and by the validating also needs to be owned by product marketing or whomever is leading the sales enablement program. So the final important part here is coaching. Now, I think every sales leader knows the importance of coaching, and by making it part of your framework, it keeps emphasis on it, it shines a light on it continuously, and it keeps people accountable at the forefront. And then also, this will help you get your sales managers and sales leaders involved, because ultimately they know that coaching is only going to make their sales reps better and stronger on that message. Understand, everyone here may not have the tools, may not have the resources or the software to build this super efficient sales enablement program, but don't worry if you're a startup or you don't have the budget to get some of those sales enablement software tools that make everything very easy. You have Zoom, you have Google Drive, you have Dropbox. There are plenty of free e-learning platforms out there where you can build. So get creative get creative and think about how you're going to make everything work and how you're going to follow up on it. And there are so many free options out there. I think anybody's going to be able to do it. Just remember, keep it simple. And I always like to say, iPhone easy, make it very easy to find and access all of the trainings and all of the contents. I keep everything in a SharePoint site at Tacton, where salesperson can go to what we call the Sales and Marketing Collaboration Center, where they can comment on content, they can make requests, they can download all of the materials that's available to them. So that works for us. That may not work in your organization, but find a tool that does. Put everything in one place so that it's easy to access and easy to follow up on. So what are some of the key takeaways today? First, I think building a culture of alignment and adoption is very important. And that's what we talked about earlier, when you get the alignment of the upper leadership, because they will help build that culture and drive it through all the way down to the sales reps. And then next, clearly define the roles and responsibilities. So you have to know what you own, but you also have to get product to know their role in sales enablement. And then you also need to get sales to understand their role in all of this. So product needs to support you in building your enablement. You need to build the enablement as a product marketer, and then sales needs to use it and go through and follow up and adopt on the sales enablement. So keeping those roles and responsibilities is very important. Agree on timelines with your sales manager, agree on timelines with leadership, and make sure that everyone is held accountable. So next, you create a centralized hub for all things enablement, which I just mentioned. Again, you have to keep it simple. You have to keep it all in one place, because that's the only way that you're going to get people who are very busy to have access to everything in a meaningful, quick, timely way. Also, utilize incentives and celebrate achievements, because at the end of the day, everybody wants to be rewarded for their hard work. And we actually recently held an entire new way to speak about our product in certain situations that were caused by the pandemic. And I had sales reps that were reaching out to me because I didn't get them their certificate fast enough. But it was a really cool experience, and shows that they're actually finding value in our Tacton Sales University and value in the work that we're doing to enable them. Finally, align the organization on KPIs. Again, you may not be able to get a fancy sales enablement tool that's going to do all of this for you and automate it, but align on key KPIs. For me at Tacton, when we started, it was, I need 100% adoption. If we can get 100% adoption, I believe that our message can hit the market running. And so I got agreement from our SVPs in both EMEA and in the US that we would hit 100% adoption on all of our sales enablement courses. And guess what? We were able to do that. So if you get the organization to align on a few key basic KPIs, that's something that you can consistently go to and consistently refer to if you need people to adopt a little bit better. And then finally, maybe the single most important thing, keep it simple. It is so easy to end up in a rabbit hole that you're never going to get out of. And that's why when I built this today, I wanted to keep it simple. Hopefully it was very simple for you, because ultimately, if you keep it simple, you're going to be able to launch this program with a bang, and then you're going to continue to evolve over time, and then the whole organization will evolve with you in this program. So keep it simple, follow the framework, and thank you all for coming today. And I would love to answer any questions that you have.
Thanks for tuning in to another presentation courtesy of Product Marketing Off-Piste. We hope you've enjoyed the session. The good news, we've even more speakers lined up who will be sharing their product marketing expertise. So brace yourself, it promises to be quite the ride.
Videos, analysis, stats.
In some ways, things are kind of the same.
People are dropping off.
In other ways,
The screen's too slow.
well,
Fluffy, seriously?
We still got a couple things just to polish this up.
the good news is we've learned we can do this.
Any questions?
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, let's run through the sign-up flow. I really like how clean it is. And that
Turns out when we're hitting our goals, nobody cares if we're wearing pants. We just need the right tools. So our team stays a team. So no matter what comes next, we know we can work better, do better. This is going to work.
Hello, PMA community. Today's session is called Demystifying Competitive Intelligence. Our panelists are here to kind of give you a heads up on how to build a competitive intelligence program and how to get the best insights to help inform your product marketing team and the rest of the company through competitive messaging. Joining us today are Brian Falden, Head of Product Marketing at Nextdoor, Sean Broderick, Senior Manager of Product Marketing at Altify, and Cindy Berman, Product Marketing Manager at Product Board. And I'll be your moderator. My name is Brandon Most, and I lead up marketing for Boost Up. So the first question I'm going to shift over to you, Brian, and it's really geared towards who, in your estimation or your experience, really owns competitive intelligence?
Well, I find in my experience, we all do. Product marketing definitely takes a lead in a lot of cases, especially if you're working directly with a sales arm. But it also plays a big role in product decisions and informing features in the roadmaps to understand where things are at. But I find that organizations that do it great, and ones that I've been part of, do it cross-functionally, and everybody has a sense of ownership to it and excitement around it, because you can't have eyes and ears everywhere. We're not the US military. We can't fund an entire intelligence arm to go find every possible thing out. So you need sort of the eyes and ears of everybody. And it's something that then, once it becomes part of the culture, allows you to be much more nimble and have much more awareness. I always try to caution, like, you should never be afraid to find out what your competitors are doing, because it's one piece of information. It's not always respond to a competitor. It's we know what's going on in the market of all facets, from our customers, from our competitors down the line. And that makes us well-tuned to what our customers' needs are and what the jobs out there that could be done to help differentiate.
Yeah, great. And I actually want to join on that. So I agree. So one of the things that I find valuable is knowing when not to respond to competitors. I think that's equally as important and something to think about when you build your program. So anybody else in the panel have any additional thoughts you want to add?
Sure. I think it's important to really also collaborate with, sales teams as well. And so a lot of it is about making sure that you can get the inputs and the knowledge of what competitors, what you're seeing competitors are doing and what you're seeing prospects thinking about. So if you have win-loss notes, can be super helpful to have, as well as if you use Salesforce fields where salespeople can directly add, hey, I spoke to this prospect and here's a competitor that they are focused on. That input really helps bring that cross-functional viewpoint together.
I would tend to agree. And the only point I'd add to Brian's piece is when you get that input from all the other teams, for me, I think it's really up to product marketing to own with that and run with that in the same way you would a product launch or a go-to-market piece. Because if everybody owns it, you need to make sure that someone's corralling all those inputs, making sure that the whole team has visibility over it and is disseminated in the right way. And I think in the same way that product marketing has that ownership on launch-wise, they need to have it as well on the competitive and intelligence side of things.
Yeah, that's great. So kind of on that, how do you build out or automate that process so that you get key contributors not only internally, but externally in order to facilitate these kind of win-loss interviews and get the right information to arm your sales team and arm yourself in your messaging that you put out?
I mean, it can be as simple as a spreadsheet. It's not the most elegant way to do it. And the only downside with that is that keeping it fresh is hard. So there are plenty of tools out there that I've found that have stepped into this space that are really pretty good at it. And they have a lot of integrations. It, again, goes back to the maturity of an organization, though. So if you're just new at it, you're a small startup, you may just have to do it in a shared doc and pass things along across Slack or something. And then as you get a little bit more sophisticated and you start to build a better understanding of your competitive set, you're going to want to track things, everything from feature, parity to understanding of what mergers, acquisitions are happening across competitive sets, where investments are, where their C-suite is speaking, what roles are they hiring for. That's a lot of information. And so you need a way to sort of capture it and keep it fresh and then share it to the appropriate parties, given each individual needs. Like a sales team doesn't necessarily care about where like a CEO of a competitor is speaking, but overall that'll help inform a larger strategic understanding that you may want to present up to the C-suite if it comes down to planning or some other part of the organization that needs that info. Same thing on the feature parity side. It's more about understanding what you need to build and differentiate. So it could go into your positioning, it could go into future roadmaps. Again, it comes down to, depending on where you are maturity wise, depending on the complexity of what your offering is, you're going to need to track it at some point. And then eventually you're going to have to grow and have something a bit more fresh and lively. And of that, some of these competitive intelligence platforms like Clue or Crayon are out there and are doing a really good job of helping not only help collect, but keep everything in one place and disseminate it to appropriate parties.
Yeah, real quick on that, Brian. So you talked about you building internal and getting feedback externally as well. How do you, I guess, prioritize the feedback you're getting in? And then how do you from there determine, what's, as accurate as it can be and what's potentially just, rumblings that you may hear from the field? And then how do you prioritize that and put it into something that is formal, that is being digested?
Well, as Cindy was saying, win-loss is such an important place for that, right? And if you're getting a good amount of information from your reps and you're sort of collecting these insights over time, your win-loss should start to marry what you're seeing from your sales reps conversations with your win-loss reporting and your win-loss outcomes in interviews with customers. And when you start to see trends is when you then start to want to dive deeper and say, okay, maybe there's a hypothesis here that we need to figure out, or maybe there's something we need to build in the product because we're seeing this consistently affect revenue, or we're seeing it slow down the sales cycle, or we're seeing it cause whatever outcome that we don't want. And so that's where we'd want to dive in and investigate further. It's never a easy, like, oh, we're seeing this thing, let's go chase it. It takes time. I'm former Navy intelligence and I worked in cryptography and worked with intelligence analysts a lot. The thing they would always say is it's less about what we know now and it's what are we seeing from a trends perspective to help sort of illuminate what we think their next move is going to be. And that's where competitive intelligence really comes into play in some cases and allows you to shore up any gaps that you may not be seeing fully from the get-go.
Yeah, Sean, Cindy, you got any thoughts?
Sure. Yeah, I think definitely thinking about kind of the trends is super important, but I think it's also aligning that to your product strategy and to really who your target personas are. So for example, there might be some features that are pretty crucial if you are playing in a specific category, and that could really be table stakes features. But on the other point, if your product strategy is saying, hey, we want to, focus on enterprise customers, or we want to focus on this specific industry, or we want to focus on this specific use case, then it doesn't necessarily mean that all the features your competitors have you would need, but you want to really take those features and align them back and match those visions and your target customers.
Yeah, I love your point, Brian, about marrying it with the win-loss program as well, because I think that's where you take it beyond like-for-like feature comparison. And to your point as well, Cindy, around how that actually filters into the overall roadmap. You take all of this information in its totality, you do a side-by-side feature comparison, and that's going to make for a very reactive near-term product roadmap. I think when you combine all of these elements together with win-loss, with your overall competitive intelligence, your side-by-side comparisons, your battle cards, that's where the overall intelligence comes in. So that'd be my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, I think you always have to build a process. Start foundationally on what's the critical aspects and the critical competitors you want to focus in on. One of the things that I found valuable is creating kind of an automated plan through Salesforce, which actually sends surveys out or questionnaires to prospects, your channel, and also anybody that's tied internally. And this way you're getting feedback from multiple sources. What that then allows everyone to do is it funnels it down to those win-loss interviews that everybody's talking about. And depending on what they fill out in the survey, which is very quick, simple, easy to fill out, it may be something that marketing needs to take a look at, go into messaging. It may be something that's really product feature specific or support issues, and then get that to the right team to have those conversations. So that goes back to your point when you said, Sean, it's really marketing to kind of own, product marketing to own, but we have to facilitate those right conversations because we don't own every part of the process, but we need to get them in front of the right people to have those conversations.
Yeah, I love that. And I think we kicked off a project with our corporate marketing team in April 2020, whereby we created a competitor object and tied that to the lead, contact, account, and opportunity in Salesforce. And we've talked about this before, Brandon, where that actually allows you to validate who you actually think your competitors are versus what your account and opportunity metrics will actually tell you. Because anecdotally, you could have competitor X that seems to be making a lot of noise, but in reality, on a deal by deal basis or an opportunity by opportunity basis, they're not really all that present. So I think even from a starting point, if you're looking to build out that capability, that's a great place to start.
Yeah, then you can actually segment by size, enterprise, mid-market, and you can start to see kind of the variances by competitor. So I think that's a great point. And Cindy, it looks like you had a thought to add, but I don't want to call you out, but it looked like you had something coming.
Sure, no worries. Yeah, I think it's also crucial to then align too with the company and your cross-functional stakeholders on what are those key competitors so that you have kind of that common knowledge. So you could have like different groups of competitors, for example. So maybe you have competitors for your end-to-end solution, you have competitors for one part of your product, but I think it's really crucial to align on those. And I've also seen kind of to Sean's point where you'll have people, say, hey, this competitor's coming up a lot, et cetera, people making a lot of noise. And even just taking a step back and understanding who is that competitor. I've seen where, hey, it's a company where it's hasn't raised any money, 2 part-time employees. So maybe they are making kind of a big splash of noise, but they're really not what we would say as an actual competitor at this point in time.
Perfect. And Brian, I want to go back to kind of a statement you made at the very beginning of this conversation around using CI software investigators. You've done that in the past in previous conversations we had. Have you found those to be successful, or do you think they have the same challenges that we have internally? It's just hard to maintain and get really good quality information and maintain that.
So yes, I've seen them successful for sure. It's like anything though. Like I use the Salesforce example. A lot of people can implement a Salesforce CRM, but if you're not judicious about it, if you're not using it to its full capacity, it can become more of a difficult thing for the organization to maintain. And same thing with any sort of CI platform, in that you have to put the work into it to make it useful, and you have to make sure that you fully understand what you're getting for the investment. They're priced at a point where, if you had 2 dedicated heads, it's about, 20% that to run a CI platform. So you get a lot of bang for your buck with the current offerings out there. But if you're not investing in it, if you're not pruning it for information, you're not really keeping an eye on what's useful to the organization, it can become overwhelming. As far as using third-party vendors, I won't get into too much detail because a lot of the things that they do are sort of, their own secret versions, if you will, of like how they accomplish things. And I don't want to spoil that because that's useful for certain companies for sure. And it just depends on the type of company and what you're selling as a product. So things that I have seen done and where they're effective are gathering, competitive information around like a new product launch, or researching historical filings and other statements that basically across the C-suite that they sort of give a glimpse around the strategic roadmap, where they wouldn't necessarily share that publicly. They'll share it in bits and pieces, and you can write up a composite analysis. Whereas like you're just not going to have someone dedicated full time to do that. So they become super effective as sort of being that researcher analyst as well. And then there are other things that they can do to sort of really get a sense of feature parity and understanding on like bigger SaaS products where you have to get a demo and like go through a bunch of hoops just to even get the full amount of information. On the big enterprise SaaS side, they're really effective at really helping companies do that.
Great. Yeah. So a quick question to the panel, actually. So I don't know if you've ever done this. I'll raise my hand, say I have. Have you ever took a demo with a competitor and tried to get information from them that way? And if so, do you find that as an effective use case?
I've done it probably more in person at events, and I think a lot of people are feeling that loss this year, that you haven't had those in-person events to go to. You put the badge back in your pocket and you pretend you're working for somebody else, and you pick up all that information, you pick up all the leaflets, the discussions with the salesperson or whoever's on the actual booth. You get a really good sense for what the demo looks like in person. I used to find that a lot easier to manage than the virtual version where you're trying to set it up via email and it's non-company email, etc. I think that's one thing that I've really kind of missed out on this year, is attending those industry events, getting a feel for who's doing what from an in-person perspective. So that's certainly an area where I've done it before, and I've definitely missed out on it this year for sure.
Yeah, same. I mean, it's part and parcel to like trying to understand what your competitors are doing. And same thing I've done it at events where they're doing live demonstrations to a crowd. I've done it virtually as well. And it's super important sort of to understand your market and your competitive set, as well as the intricacies of their products, and maybe where you can take what you learn and apply it to sort of position around them, so to speak, or use it against them in a sales call in the future.
We're going to have to be careful that we're not blacklisted now from future.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's great. We've actually had somebody that's kind of in our ICP, or somebody that's, that we would typically sell to, that became friendly with us. And a lot of vendors in our space would want to talk to them and try to sell to them. And whether it's frowned upon or not, they gave us good insights onto what they're pitching. How are you comparing against competitor X? And they'd say, this is where we have our strengths. And it's just interesting to hear what they say versus what you believe, because a lot of times they're just not the same. And sometimes they're inaccurate. So I think those are interesting ways you can get kind of a different perspective for different audiences to see where you can kind of focus in your time. And one of the things that somebody mentioned earlier too, it's not always feature to feature. It could be, if you're talking to security, it could be a SOC 2 thing that you have that they don't. Like that could be an easy differentiator that sales needs to know about. So I like to be able, I think Cindy, you said it, align the different kind of features or specific strengths against each persona within the sales process. I think that's critical. So, we talked about go-to-market, same process for competitive intelligence, get everybody aligned. When you come out with a new product, competitive intelligence seems to be something that should be hugely valuable or hugely important to kind of understand the landscape and determine what should you build in the product and how should you launch it and what messaging you should use and all those kind of aspects. Is that something that you found to be a critical part of your go-to-market process? And anybody can answer this to the panel.
I think when you're launching a new product, I think it's always important to take competitive analysis as one input. So to understand, hey, is this a table stakes feature that your competitors have, that you bringing to them that you developing is also going to make you kind of level and give that same kind of features that others have, or is it something that's like completely unique and different for you? And if it is kind of a differentiator, that's something you definitely want to highlight, and you can highlight that in your messaging, on your product pages, and even in with sales and success teams when you're positioning it. So I think it's really crucial to just understand where the feature sits compared to competitors.
I got to say, I mean, from a personal perspective, it doesn't form a massive part of the actual go-to-market process, because at the moment in our organization, we're probably 1 to 6, 1 to 7 in terms of product marketing to PM ratio. So you really have to pick your battles in terms of where you're actually spending your time and where does this actually, what's going to give me the most bang for my buck. And typically we would spend that on the messaging side, on the sales tools side, and really honing in on what the value that you're delivering to your customers. And I always find from a competitive intelligence perspective, and this I think, Brian, where is the tech stack comes into play for 2021, is that it saves you a lot of time. And it tends to be one of those Friday afternoon battle card updates, activities from a competitive intelligence perspective for me. So it's certainly, you know, less than 10% of my role, and one of the ones that tends to fall down in terms of overall importance, particularly when it comes to go-to-market launches. In saying that, we have a cadence of updating battle cards for our kind of key 3-4 competitors twice a year, and depending on when people come in. One of the other things we've done as well is where we have salespeople or CSMs who come in from that particular competitor, we'll sit down with them within the first couple of weeks and they join the company, and really mine them for that information and what the inside view is. Because I think, coming back to the investigations piece, getting behind the messaging and what that really looks like in real terms from a customer experience perspective can be hard when you're looking at just websites, just G2 Crowd reviews, Gartner reviews, that type of thing.
Where I will say I've had experience where it has played a significant role in go-to-market is when we've done category creation. And the reason for that is because you have to spend a lot of time figuring out what is your adjacent competitors, like what are you replacing? And that's a strong narrative you have to tell, because you have to sort of tell that in your narrative anyway from the very get-go, not only with what you're building, because that should be automating what your competitors are doing in the adjacent markets, but it also should inform why it's valuable and sort of what that value chain is going to look like. So what in cases where we've done that at companies I've been at, that's where it became the strongest use case. But yeah, I mean, as the others have said, you know, it becomes part of the information stack, but it's not a significant one. But it depends. I mean, like, you could be, if your business strategy is, we want to take market share away from this 800-pound gorilla, then it's going to inform it a lot more. It's very rare in a lot of companies that you'll see that, but there are certain challenger brands that go directly after a competitor. In the consumer side of the world, it's much more apparent, because it's like, you think of around positioning and how it informs the strategy there. You look at like brands like Coca-Cola or 7-Up, and like all of their sort of slogans and positioning campaigns were directly from a result of trying to stand out from the competition. And so, you know, in the tech world or in the B2B world, not as strong, but it still informs it. It's more on like the easier understandable ones, is like, you know, things like the Uncola, like, who are they talking about? They're talking about Pepsi and Coke, right? And they're clearly saying we're better than that for that reason. And it's a simple phrase, but people know it. And so that's where I see it very much applicable. Like I said, it goes in the B2B space. I see it more in the category creation, and then sort of helps inform, depending on if it's a differentiating feature or something you're going to really want to own in the market compared to your competitors. If you did some sort of SWOT analysis in the early parts of the product lifecycle to inform that go-to-market strategy.
Yeah, so you just hit at the very end what I was going to hit on. So yeah, I think it's further upstream than go-to-market. It's what informs the product creation, what features you need to fill the need or catch up, or if it's a new product, what's the SWOT analysis, who do we have in the market, what's the actual market size, who we're going to be competing against, and doing some of that market research kind of as tandem as your business case development prior to your go-to-market side of things. So that's what we found a lot of value, is using competitive intelligence, not only at the go-to-market from a messaging perspective, but if you do it upfront in the product development side, that then helps them create the product, which then helps you in turn help create that messaging. So another question for the group, depending on the size of your organization, it may not be something you've done, but have you ever, you know, I've seen if you search different competitors out there, you'll see ads that say, choose this competitor over this competitor, do this versus that. Have you seen those to be effective? And if so, can you provide an example?
I haven't seen them necessarily be effective. I find that if you're doing an SEO or SEM strategy around keywords and what people do for comparison, and you do sort of content marketing strategy based on that go-to-market plan to address that, that's effective. But like, I can't speak to other companies that have done it. I can't say that they've been effective or not, but I have yet to see where that has been a strategy a lot of companies want to employ for various reasons, going back to just, you know, decorum, I guess. But there may be some places where that has worked. I mean, Apple's a great example when they directly took on IBM, right? I mean, back in the 80s, that was a way to get a lot of word of mouth and buzz. So you can't argue that that didn't work to a degree, but it took a long time for that to work, and a lot of missteps as well that came from that. So, you know, I'm not saying never. I'm just saying there's not a lot of cases where um, if you're telling that storytelling element where it's a you versus them, where people really pay attention to it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, from a keyword perspective, one of the products in our unit, it's a proposal automation tool called Qvidian. We have a keyword search based on one of our key competitors, and that drives to a landing page on a like-for-like comparison. Some key customers where they're strong in those particular industries and trying to drive demos and interest that way. Certainly from a search perspective and an overall awareness point of view and a share of search, it's been very effective in that regard, and it's actually driven quite an amount of momentum. But again, like you say, it's exactly down to, it's going to be case by cases depending on your market position. If you're really trying to grow that market share at the expense of somebody else and you're coming at it from a smaller base, then it's right in the sweet spot. If you're going to be punching down on some of the smaller guys, well, then it's not really going to look as well as it should.
Yeah, and I think that also makes sense too, especially if you're creating a new category and you are going against legacy platforms. So often you might have, a new product that you need to be able to anchor it against a competitor. So I feel like going feature by feature often doesn't really work. One, that information can become really out of date. And you're right, as of decor, as it can cause kind of individuals and companies to, not feel great, or you think you're positioning them differently. But if you have kind of a new category, a new software that you are thinking about and you're trying to promote, if people don't have kind of that individual specific examples of here are things that you might have used for it, and here's now how it could work better, I think that can be a challenge for them to understand the value of your brand. So I see kind of more of a high level aspect that really helping.
Yeah, and Brian, I really liked your point, and I think everybody touched on it, is, doing that competitor research on what your competitor's bidding on and what their keywords are to inform your strategy. Maybe they've been doing it long and things like that. So that might be another thing that people don't really think about when they think about competitive intelligence. They're probably thinking about what features and functions and things that get the sales team and arm them to be successful in having those, deeper conversations. But you bring it up home where, it could be up on how to inform your marketing strategy. Where do you it could be where do you put your money in publications? Where are they at? Where do you need to be? Fill those gaps. So there's a lot of things that competitive intelligence is that people may not quite think about. So that's a great point. And so one question I have that is something that I always found challenging is, product marketing is very broad in many organizations, and they touch many different teams. How do you sell competitive intelligence to your management as a critical part of what you do and carve out time to do that? Is it something where everybody on the product marketing team for the products they own have a piece of the pie? Do you, like we have at a company that I've worked for, create a product marketing role that only focuses on competitive intelligence across all products? What have you seen work, and how do you sell that to your leadership team?
I think in a lot of...
Oh, go ahead, Cindy.
Sure. I think in a lot of leadership teams, it kind of comes from the top in many times that it is kind of a priority. For me personally, I've been in incredibly lean product marketing teams and product marketing / product management teams. So I have seen kind of some of the best success working with having one individual really owning kind of the initial process. So aligning on, what are the inputs, what is the outcome, and output that we're providing to, our sales and success teams. And then working with kind of the specific product marketing managers that own specific products to then say, here's kind of overall what we think, and then they can ultimately kind of own it going forward. But I think for me personally, it's been crucial to have one individual and one common framework to start with the competitive analysis.
Yeah, I think, Cindy, I'm probably very similar to you in terms of like lean product marketing teams, 1-2 people across a full business unit or an organization. And for us in particular, we certainly own it, but it's not, as I say, it's not something that we spend an inordinate amount of time on, probably 5-10% in general. And it's not I think, we've gone down the category creation route before with Altify. We created a category called customer revenue optimization. And again, we would probably always steer towards what's the value we're providing. And if we have a real need for a battle card or a piece of intel that's needed from a salesperson point of view, we put that effort in, but we're probably a little bit more reactive, to be quite honest. And that when something comes in, we know it's a key competitor, we've looked at the data from Salesforce in terms of the opportunities, we really spend the time then, make sure we update it, make sure we get that together, get it updated after about maybe twice a year or so. And I actually recently completed the product marketing certification, and Richard and all the guys will be delighted to hear that. But we're actually using the competitive intelligence Intel battle card from that certification and that leave behind as our platform. Our sales guys tend to like the extra detail, that kind of long form comparison across a load of many different areas. We also work with an SDR team, and we have a streamlined version of that as well, which is more in the kind of one pager, which kind of suits their needs a little bit better. But I think it's always horses for courses, right? As in what's the right content for the right audience. It's the same for competitive intelligence internally as it is for messaging externally.
Yeah, and I would agree, and I would just add to both of your points on this is that in past organizations, I've seen it come in a large part driven through sales. They, are a super competitive bunch. They hate losing to their competitors. And if you have like a really large sales arm, you tend to hear a lot of noise if they're starting to see a lot of competitive problems. I've been in the fortunate position where I walked into that and I was able to put a dedicated resource toward it. It moved the company leaps and bounds. But then, because it was so sales driven, the C-suite was also very much mindful of competition and wanting to make sure that we always had a sense of that. And so I've sort of seen it come from both angles, is that, sales will sort of be the early warning sign. And if there's enough sort of a drum beat, and there's enough sort of tone at the top, as you said, Cindy, then, you'll see the perfect nexus sort of form where you could step in and do something about it. Now, whether you do it cross-functionally, which is what I'm a big advocate for, or have a dedicated person, it's really just dependent on your resourcing and what you can afford to do. If you're really scrappy and lean, you have to go cross-functional because you don't have enough people to do it and dedicate time to it.
Yeah, I think even when you have a designated resource in product marketing, it's still cross-functional, right? You still got to get input from sales and product and every other team that supports them. And that just funnels into that one person to kind of facilitate. But I also think it's important that no matter if you're in product marketing, designated competitive intelligence, or just product marketing in general, the more you know about your competitors and you hear first sight, the better your messaging is going to be anyway. So I always feel like you need to have part of that built into your process, just to kind of inform that. So, and that's key. And then one thing I want to admit, I think every product marketing organization is very lean. I haven't been a part of one that's not like 1-to-4 to product management kind of ratio. So you do have to prioritize your time by the products that have, the biggest upsell or the biggest opportunity, the biggest market, and then you kind of then prioritize from there. So that's very key, a decision that I guess product marketing has to make. And I do agree too. I think, Cindy, you said have somebody own the process, regardless if you have dedicated resources. Somebody create the process, get it to facilitate it, and then you're just kind of gathering input. And then one question to you, Sean, and you kind of alluded to it, you create this battle card, right? It's kind of like the messaging approach. You create one really good message, you use it in many different forms, right? So how do you then create one battle card that you can inform, like you said, your BDRs and their messaging, sales and their messaging, and marketing and their messaging? What is that core piece, and how do you maintain that?
We maintain it. From a platform point of view, we use our Compose gallery from a sales enablement perspective. That's the one location that everybody's going to find that information in. From a maintenance perspective, I guess it's really just primary research owned by product marketing. If we have specific requirements or drum beats from sales, like Brian says, we'll take that into account. We'll look at some of the recent win-loss deals and look at some of the features that maybe they've actually maybe have changed in the last couple of months from a product capability perspective. So it's really going through all of those key areas, product functionality, messaging. I think particularly new hires as well, from a marketing and sales perspective, that can kind of show a lot of momentum in an organization too, where they're bringing in key people and putting in additional resources in specific areas, some new campaigns, new messaging, and just working through all of those different areas. That's the twice yearly for me.
And I think sometimes I think it's often also helpful to have to set up alerts for your major competitors, because obviously features will always come and go and change and be different. And you don't want to completely sell feature by feature, because you need to be able to better understand, your customers' pain point and share how you map back to that and how you can provide that value. But often if, the biggest things that a competitor is going to be doing are going to be in PR. So by being able to, yes, you could have a cadence, hey, quarterly or, biannually, we are updating our documentation and our competitive intelligence. But when you get a press release or a notification of something really big, a new C-level individual, a new product line, that's where you should take kind of a step back and update your competitive intelligence.
Yeah, you all mentioned the drumbeat from the sales team, right? And so you're getting a lot of feedback from a lot of different people, different parts of the region, different product lines, and trying to prioritize, the input you're getting in and how does that inform messaging, the discovery questions, competitive intelligence, those sorts of things. How do you validate or prioritize the feedback that you're getting in order to inform your decision making?
I think something important is not to take everything as completely important, as I said before. So really aligning it to your product vision. So if you use kind of like a tool, like if you're thinking about kind of product management in general, right? And so if you're using a tool like Product Board, you're going to be able to get all your sources of customer information and feedback and prospect information, feedback from all different sources. So you're going to get prospects and customers from Intercom, from Gainsight, right? From Slack, from emails, etc. And so it's taking kind of what your understanding from the competitive intelligence, but then mirroring that back to the needs of your customers. So if your customers are asking for something that you're not seeing in competitive intelligence, that might be, you have to kind of balance that. And on the other hand, if you see something that from your competitive intelligence efforts that is like really important, but if your customers are not providing that feedback, it doesn't meet their needs, then you need to balance that and focus more on what are your actual customer needs and what features and products can you develop to solve those needs.
Yeah, and I would add to that, in my experience, to get, somewhat tactical on where I've seen this come up, there have been times where I would hear about a competitor coming up a lot. And then we even would lose deals. But then if you start adding up the deals and look how much revenue it was small. And so it's like, okay, that means they're playing well in a market segment that probably isn't as big of a deal. But if you just went by sheer volume of noise, you would think it's a big deal. So I always try to temper it with what does the data say, as well as what are we hearing. Of course, we don't ever want to have a rep lose a deal to a competitor. That's a given. So there might be some minimal investment around objection handling or something along those lines that can help, or a battle card update. But you have to sort of look at the macro view, and that if you have a good sense of who your threats are, and you have a good sense of how they're actually impacting the business from a revenue perspective, or whatever you're measuring on that's important to the business at the time, growth or the like, then you can make adjustments on strategy around that accordingly. So you're always going to hear a lot of things, right? And you just have to be able to temper it with what's meaningful with some sort of data. If you don't have data, well, then you probably do have to use some intuition and test and learn. But it's always best to try to fall back on what your data can help you provide a picture to.
Yeah, I think you hit it. Add qualifying questions for every salesperson as they came in. Size of the deal, how long we've been. There's just a set of qualifying questions that I would ask to even kind of determine if it's warranting another conversation. Because as you know, you get a lot of input. You can't do everything. You got to do the most strategic things. Prioritize your time. And Sean, sorry to cut you off. I know you had something to say.
No, I was going to say that famous line: if we have data, we use data. If we have opinions, we go with mine. And that's to your point, Brian. I think, and a lot of it comes back to your relationship with your product management team. And if you're really just using battle cards as a way to help sales from an objection perspective and not really feeding that voice of the market back to the product management team, maybe we need a solution like Product Board to help us in that regard. But I think that's really crucial as well, just to make sure that it's not just one, you're not using the battle cards and the competitive intelligence for one specific area. You're making sure that it does inform the roadmap where it's needed.
Yeah, I completely agree. And one thing that I find important is a lot of sales always want to think about feature for feature, how are we different, better, unique? But it always doesn't come down to feature to feature, you know that, right? So it could come down to the pricing model, it could come down to price, it could come down to ease of use, it could come back to lots of different things. And so making sure you have a process to capture all those kind of aspects and funnel it to the right person within the organization to address those is critical. And it's something that I think sometimes overlooked because we get so bogged down on how do we compare ourselves to this individual competitor by feature. And that's not always the best way to do it. If they've been doing it longer, there might be something else that you want to call out that's unique or different that's not really feature specific. Could be a good value point. Yeah, so I know we're getting close to time, but I want to give everybody here, is there any question that you want to throw out to the team that says, hey, maybe we didn't cover this that we should, or tips and tricks that you want to leave everybody that's listening to this?
I'd love to get an insight from everybody here around the co-opetition aspect. So where people who are not necessarily like for like competitors, but they compete for dollars. So, we're a sales software company, but we would compete with sales training companies for dollars in budget in the next year. How does everybody here manage those type of interactions, and what kind of effort do you put into making sure that we show the value versus different pieces of the category, I suppose?
Yeah, I can speak to this maybe from perspective. So at Nextdoor, I had the product marketing for the ad side of the business, and so it's not a direct correlation here, but we don't compete one-to-one. We don't just like win to a company and lose to a company. We fight for share of wallet. And I have found that really understanding where you can stand out, what do you want to own in the marketplace beyond what your competitors may chip away at, and sort of taking that mantle and driving that mantle. So that's it's a strong positioning play, but it should start to step forward when you start looking at the holistic view of the company and your product set. And it's super important to do that because, well, yes, you will sort of see these adjacent competitors take some of that share of wallet from you. But if you really turn up where you're great and you really go real loud about that, then they're no longer really competitors because you've sort of said they're not really the people you need to worry about. And then you're going to have a new subset of customers coming towards you as well as the ones that you already have to go and grow and invest with you. Because if you're looking at the overall budgeting, they're going to say, yes, you're sort of almost creating a new category by differentiating really strongly in that you're saying, yes, that is budget over there, but I need budget for this. I use this analogy from my Axon days, which is formerly Taser. And before there were tasers, there was no such thing as a budget for, electrical weapons. It was firearms, so there wasn't body camera budgets, it was, other equipment. And so they had to create a new budget for it. And the same thing can happen even if you're not doing category creation. If you're just introducing something that's something that's super positionable and owner and you can own, they'll start to sort of carve out budget for that thing, that subset of thing they want to do, rather than just sort of peeling it away from the general pool. At least in my experience, that's what I've seen. It's a hard question to answer though. There's no silver bullet for sure, but I think that's how I've seen it work when you drive that home.
I think here comes into play a lot like partner strategies. And so
yeah, it's a good one too.
Yeah, I think it can be really helpful. So for example, there are many other softwares that might be kind of competing for the budget, but you want to show that how your software can kind of make that existing software better. So I think when you kind of position it and when you really kind of connect them through a either formal partnership or integrations or other things, you can really show, hey, you need your other thing, right? You need your other software still, but we're going to make that software better, and we're going to be able to make kind of like your life easier. So I think for those, I've never really said, I've never really been an organization where we've said, don't use this tool, but use this tool and with ours, and together it can be better. And I think that allows for great partnership opportunities where you both mutually support each other and promote one another.
I think that's great, and that's very true for us in the Salesforce ecosystem as well, where it's probably particularly heightened as well. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and Sean, my 2 cents on that is it depends on what your product, your platform is built on, right? So it depends if an organization is looking for best of breed or more of an enterprise solution that can do not only that, maybe not as well, but a lot more. Then you have a lot more use cases to sell. So is it a consolidation play? Is it head to head? I think there's a lot of ways you can be strategic in how you message that. And so, without getting into any examples from my company, but we do go head to head against, a certain category of sales intelligence, if you will. But if we went head to head there and didn't bring about the bigger picture, the bigger platform, the bigger value, then we would probably lose a lot of those head to head. And honestly, we wouldn't even probably want to compete with them, because that's not what the value is. The value is in the bigger platform, the bigger use cases, broader use cases. So great point. I'm glad you brought that up. So before we wrap up, I know we're probably right at time. I wanted to see if anybody had any final thoughts that they want to share with the community. And if not, it sounds like if not, I'm glad everybody was able to attend. Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Cindy. Thanks, Brian, for attending this session. And thanks, and enjoy the rest of your Off-Piste sessions, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.